Hey guys, so I'm making this video because I was working on an Arduino project that actually had a very high requirement for computational power, but didn't really have a requirement for a large number of I/O pins. And when it came time to choose my board, I wasn't sure if using this huge board here, the Mega 2560, would have an advantage over this tiny little Arduino Pro Mini. Essentially, I'm wondering if somehow this is more capable computationally than this tiny board or the medium-sized Uno here. Also, I wanted to know what are the power requirements to run each board, and I found that the information online isn't super clear, so I decided to put it to the test myself. So I'll put all the specs for the boards up on the screen. As a quick introduction here, the Mega 2560 has a huge number of pins, I/O pins, 54 in total, has a huge amount of programming space, 256 kilobytes, 8 kilobytes of RAM, and 4 kilobytes of EEPROM, which is usually my go-to if I have a massive project. The Uno, probably the most common Arduino board, only has 32 kilobytes of flash memory, 2 kilobytes of SRAM, and a kilobyte of EEPROM. Whereas this little guy, the Pro Mini, only has 16 kilobytes of programming space, 1 kilobyte of RAM, and half a kilobyte of EEPROM. And I should point out that all three boards, they run at 5 volts and 16 megahertz. So it would make sense to me that they could all run at the exact same speed, but it just seems unlikely based on the size. Maybe just looking at even the size of the processor, this one's absolutely tiny versus the one here for the Pro Mini. So I just want to know, is there a clear winner between the three boards, and also how much power does it take to run the same program on each one? So we'll be putting it to the test. I also want to point out that only the Uno here is a genuine Arduino board. The other two are cheap Chinese clones. Cheaper Chinese clones are much, much cheaper and function in the exact same way as the genuine ones, but I want to point out that if you really like the Arduino project, I would highly support at least buying a couple genuine boards or just throwing them a bit of money so they can keep their great project going. So let's put it to the test. The code that I've written is just a super simple prime number finder, which essentially tries to find as many prime numbers as possible in a brute force manner, starting from the number 2 and going upwards, and just checking if each number is prime by trying to essentially divide it by every number going up until the square root of that number. So this is a super brute force approach. It doesn't take a lot of memory because Arduinos are very, very low on memory. And this essentially just tests the CPU of each Arduino. It doesn't really test anything else, including the peripheries on the board or anything of that sort. The code is a little sloppy. It's not really meant to be optimized, and the link is in the video description. Feel free to comment or improve it or tell me about how bad it is. I don't mind. So the first thing we'll be doing is just checking the power consumption of the code on all three boards. Okay, so in order to test the power consumption from each board, I'm going to be powering it from a 5-volt source here and running it through an ammeter so we can calculate the total power consumption. I'm going to be going straight into the 5-volt pin so it bypasses the voltage regulator and saves a little bit of power. Starting off with the Mega here. I'm going to give it a couple seconds just to stabilize. Okay, so that's good enough. I'll call it 55.3 milliamps. Okay, now on to the Uno. Again, just gonna give it a couple seconds to stabilize. It's good enough for me. I'm gonna call it 49.6 milliamps. And then finally, to test the Pro Mini, it's a little bit more challenging because there's no headers soldered on. But we can just pop the positive into VCC and negative into ground, and I'll hold it just for the purpose of this test. All right, should be good to go. This one jumps around quite a bit more, but I'm gonna go ahead and just call it 32 even milliamps. All right. And now to actually get to the bottom of which board is faster, I've got the same test running on all 3 boards overlaid here in the same screen. On the left we have the Mega, in the middle the Uno, and on the right is the Pro Mini. The test has been sped up 12 times because I don't think you guys want to sit here and watch it run for 5 minutes. So the console outputs maybe look a little bit different just based on the random nature of finding a prime. It only chooses to output when it finds a prime within a certain time frame, but it is the same test at the end of the day. So there we have it. All 3 tests ran on all the boards, and it turns out that they're almost identical in terms of speed. The only real notable difference is the Pro Mini consumes about half as much power as the Mega, but it turns out as long as an Arduino is running at the same clock speed, in this case 16 megahertz, and it's an 8-bit microcontroller, which all 3 are, and most Arduinos are in this case. It doesn't really matter which board you choose, it's going to be the same speed.